Okay, so why don't we get started? Welcome to the webinar on Vietnam's Path to Socialism, sponsored by the Communist Party USA International Department and Peace and Solidarity Commission's Subcommittee for Solidarity with Vietnam. My name is Amiad. I'm the host, and I am honored to introduce our two guest speakers. First, we have Trần. He is the Standing Vice President of the Vietnam Peace Committee, the Standing Vice President of the Vietnam Peace and Development Foundation, the Chairman of the Advisory Council on Foreign and Overseas Vietnamese Affairs of the Central Committee of the Vietnam Fatherland Front. Our second speaker is Merle Ratner. Merle has been involved in Vietnam solidarity work since 1968, beginning in the anti-war movement. She is co-founder of the Vietnam Agent Orange Relief and Responsibility Campaign, co-chair of the board of the Laundry Workers Center, co-organizer of, and was the co-organizer of the International Seminar on Marxism Today, along with the Ho Chi Minh Academy here in Vietnam. Our program today will begin with background information on for 10 minutes on the path to socialism today by Mr. Light. This will be followed by Socialism Today, the current state of socialist-oriented market economy and what it means for the Vietnamese working class and Vietnamese people. Followed by 10 minutes on the political system and development of the socialist democracy, also by Light. And then the two speakers will speak together for 20 minutes to 25 minutes on the current challenges and opportunities. And then we'll have 20-25-minute discussion, questions and answer time. If anyone has questions, please use the question and answer function at the top of the webinar. So with that, I would like to invite Trần to begin speaking.
Thank you very much, Amiad. I would like, first of all, to convey the warmest greeting to all of you from Hanoi, Vietnam. Now in Hanoi is 7 a.m. and I know that you are in the evening, but this time distance and physical distance cannot separate us, and we are together here, and I'm very honored to share with you the information concerning the building of socialism in Vietnam since after the war over in Vietnam. You and people around the world may know well about the war in Vietnam, but not many people know how difficult time Vietnam had to go through right after the war, which lasted nearly 2 decades. Before the war, Vietnam was a poor and backward agricultural and semi-feudal and semi-colonized country with a self-supply economy. But the war of aggression by French and then particularly the American has left very heavy legacies for our country. During the war of aggressions of American army, they have dropped the number of bombs and explosives on Vietnam, equivalent to 4 times more than total bombs and explosives used in the Second World War. And you may note that the territory of Second World War is much larger than the territory of Vietnam. As a result, 3 million of people of Vietnam were killed, 4 million others were injured, and nearly 5 million people were affected by Agent Orange containing the dioxin. Infrastructure and majority of the forest in the south of Vietnam was destroyed. Nearly 800,000 bombs, tons of bombs and landmines were left unexploded, and the land of 22% of land of our country was covered by the USO, unexploded ordnance. Today, even now, 47 years after the war, there are hundreds of thousands children still are being born with defects because of the impact of the Agent Orange dioxin, and over 200,000 people are still missing in their own homeland. After the war, Vietnam badly needed a peaceful environment and assistance from international community to address the war legacy, rebuild the country, develop economy, and improve the people's life. Unfortunately, all this did not happen. The US had imposed embargo and launched various kind of sabotage against Vietnam for nearly 2 decades. The embargo was ended only in 1994, and US normalized the relationship with Vietnam only in 1995. Meanwhile, in Cambodia, after taking power, the Khmer Rouge, on the one hand, launched a genocide against its own people. On the other hand, launched attacks against Vietnam for several years, killing a lot of people in Vietnam. When Vietnam counterattacked Khmer Rouge and helped Cambodian people to liberate themselves from the genocide regime, China has launched an aggression in the northern provinces of Vietnam. US, China, and Western countries with their alliance has mobilized embargo and isolation against Vietnam for decades, while supporting the Cambodian government, so-called Democratic Cambodia, with Khmer Rouge as the core. That forced Vietnam voluntary troops to maintain in Cambodia to help Cambodian people to protect themselves from returning of the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia for another 10 years. All these factors, the war legacy, the embargo by the US, the hostility by China, and the war in Cambodia were objective conditions negatively influencing socio-economic situation in Vietnam, which is already very bad after the war. But apart from those objective difficulties, we had made also a very serious subjective mistakes in running our social economic development process after the war, with the motto of moving fast and strongly to socialism. We have very soon after the war nationalized and collectivized all the business in Vietnam in all spheres, industry, services, and agriculture. The objective of these measures was to eradicate exploitation, to achieve social equality and progress, and make people equal in the society. And there is achievement in that aspect. But on the other hand, the mentioned model was extremely ineffective economically. For example, Vietnam traditionally was a poor agricultural economy, but productivity in agriculture itself then was very low, which led to a chronic shortage of food, forcing the government to import at about 1 million tons of food per year in order to meet the people's need at the minimum level. The similar situation was seen in all other productive sectors, causing serious deficit of all essential commodities. In the middle of 1980s, inflation was a 3-digit rate for 3 consecutive years, even reaching more than 700% per year. Over 70% of population live in poverty. Our country then was in a very severe socio-economic crisis. Our main mistake was to confuse the starting point for destination, meaning a socialist society without exploitation, while ensuring social justice and equality, as well as comprehensive system of social welfare for the people, is a noble objective to strive for, but it is a long process of enormous effort for economic, cultural, and social development, as well as building technical materialistic infrastructure, not a one-day business. Vietnam, in fact, just entered the early phase of transitional period to socialism and did not have yet socialism. However, we rushed to apply a development model incompatible with our country's existing concrete situation. For instance, our main form of agricultural production then was a manual one with the buffalo in front and plow in behind, which is suitable mainly for the household's family. There was no mechanization or any other objective conditions, prerequisites, or demand for organizing and arranging collective labor. Yet we were too hurried to foster collectivization or even develop high-level cooperatives in agriculture. In fact, we have over-socialized productive relations beyond the existing level of productive forces, which was still very low. This was in a contradiction with Marx's teaching and negatively affected the productivity. The application of the planning mechanism from central to the grassroots level via bureaucratic system could not ensure the relevance and with existing reality and significantly limited dynamism and creativeness from locality. The subsidy of housing, food, healthcare, and education, while the state's budget was very tight, could provide only basic needs at minimum level and spare no resources for development investment. The result was a rather equal society, but everybody was equally poor and had very little, had limited possibility to improve their life. In that context, since 2080s, the Communist Party of Vietnam undertook several experiments and gradually implemented new measures to renew the model of socio-economic development in Vietnam. The Sixth Party Congress in 1986 decided to officially adopt the Đổi mới, which is renewal in Vietnamese policy, into practice. The renewal policy set by the CPV was based on concrete reality of Vietnam and practical experiences, as well as creativeness of the grassroots level. In the renewal process, the party also learned from the country's practices and international experiences. The first breakthrough was in the field of agriculture, with mainly the main measure was transferring the land use right from cooperative to farmers to carry out household production, also known as household contract. This policy, after the implementation, immediately boosted agricultural production in Vietnam. In a short time, Vietnam could produce enough food to feed its population, and in 1989 already began to export rice and soon became one of the largest rice exporter of the world. This result was the essential basis for extension of modifying the production relation to match with the development of development level of productive forces in all other sectors, forming the foundation for an economic renewal policy targeted at freeing up production capacity and mobilizing maximum resources for economic development and improvement of people's life. The focus of the economic renovation policy was the gradual transition from the centrally planned and subsidized model to a socialist-oriented economy. At this stage, the main characteristics of socialist-oriented market economy of Vietnam can be listed as follows. First of all, in terms of the objective, the socialist-oriented market economy aims at promoting prosperity for the people and a strong democratic, equal, and civilized country. The socialist-oriented market economy takes economic development as principal tools to improve and better people's life. Thus, its objectives are not only the economic growth, but also the advancement of social progress and justice, culture, morality, and environmental protection. In short, the development mode is a comprehensive, equitable, sustainable, and human-centered development. Hence, while considering the central task is economic development, the party and state advocate the promotion of social progress and justice in every step of economic development, taking the cultural development as the spiritual foundation of the society and protecting the environment, not trading environment for development. Secondly, in terms of mechanism, the socialist-oriented market economy operates according to market rules under the management and regulation by the socialist state to take advantages of the market dynamism to stimulate economic development, at the same time to contain the negative impact and direct the market activities to achieving development targets for the common interests of the society. On the other hand, socialist-oriented market economy has a combination of market operation and macro planning by the state via short, medium, and long-term plans to implement the comprehensive development objectives. Since the market resources are often concentrated primarily in high profit area, the allocation of resources of a socialist-oriented market economy combines and complements the public resources to market resources through a target program of the state and public investment to better meet the development demands of the society. Thirdly, in terms of economic sector, the socialist-oriented market economy is multi-sectoral in which the public sector plays the key role. This combination is needed because despite the important role, the private sector and foreign investment focus mainly in short-term, highly profitable localities industry, and that are unable to meet the need of the social development of the country's long-term and country long-term interest. State-owned enterprises are not competing for profit-seeking with non-state enterprises, but are the state economic tool to be directly involved in the market to carry out important development tasks necessary for the society and the country where enterprises of other sectors do not want, are unable, or cannot appropriately take. For instance, the state-owned enterprises have monopoly in the area directly related to the national security and dominant in the area, decisively influencing the stability and of the macroeconomy, such as finance, energy, post and telecommunication, public transport, etc., or actively work in important areas that can significantly affect economy and public interest, such as development of various industries, infrastructure, food trading, pharmacy, electricity, and clean water, etc. Fourth, in terms of the social policy, social development, with the determination of advancing social progress and justice in every step of economic development and policy, while facilitating, encouraging people to freely doing business to improve their own life, the party and the state and the whole society focus to supporting and empowering the poor and people in difficult localities via national program on poverty reduction, agricultural and rural development, and supporting people of ethnic minority groups or in remote area. The minimum wage is being raised every year, often higher than the rate of economic growth and inflation. While being unable to ensure free education for all at all levels, the state prioritized free and reduced tuition for the poor student and student of ethnic groups in remote area. While allocates 20% of the state budget to education. While being unable yet to provide free healthcare for everyone, the state prioritize free health insurance for the poor, children under 6, and the elderly. At the same time, the state concentrates on developing healthcare system, especially at local level in rural area and far and remote area. The party and state issue series of policies to ensure gender equality and to provide support for ethnic groups, residents of difficult areas, people with disabilities, and other disadvantaged groups. The renovation policy have led to significant positive changes in our country for the past 3 years. The economy sustained a relatively high growth rate, at average at 7% per year. And GDP of Vietnam have increased nearly 10 times during the past 35 years. I'm sorry, GDP increased 10 times from 2000 to 2020. Economic growth in 2019 was more than 7%, among the world's highest. Food production increased from 12 million in 1980s to 43.6 million tons in 2016. From a nation lacking of food, Vietnam now is the second largest rice exporter and the top exporter of many other agricultural products of the world. Industry grew fast from only 29% of the GDP in 1986 to 34.5% in 2019. Exportation increased constantly from 2.4 billion USD in 1990 to more than 300 billions in 2020. It means that more than 100 times during the past 30 years. The structure of the investment, total investment in 2018, state sector accounted for 1/3, means that 33.3%, while non-state sector accounted for 43%, and foreign investment was 23%. Economic growth has changed the country image and, most importantly, created conditions to significantly improve people's life. Per capita income increased increased 30 times during the last 30 years. Vietnam in 2008 had graduated from an underdeveloped country group. But per capita income from 2016 to 2018 increased by 10.8% yearly, at average, higher than economic growth rate. The rate of poor households nationwide by national standard decreased from 75% in 1986 to 58% in 1993, 22% in 2005, and to under 4% in 2019. Generally, every 10 years, the poverty rate in Vietnam was equal to UN poverty eradication goal set for 15 years. Vietnam was recognized by the UN as one of the few countries that completed the MDGs on poverty eradication earlier. Vietnam completed illiteracy eradication and compulsory primary education by the year 2000 and secondary education by the year 2010. In 2015, nearly 96% of people over 15 years old could read and write. In terms of the healthcare, Vietnam had eradicated smallpox and polio and is able to control many emerging dangerous epidemics. Was recognized by the WHO to be the first country in the world to stop SARS, and one of the among the best example in the world of coping with COVID-19 and HIV/AIDS prevention. Malnutrition rate, mortality rate of children, and maternal mortality rate has been reduced significantly in the past decades. Unemployment has been restrained at a low rate. For example, in 2018, unemployment rate was 2%, in which 2.95% was in urban area and 1.55% was in rural areas. The rate of homeless households nationwide has been reduced 10 times in the past year. By 2019, there are only 1,244 homeless households remain. Vietnam Human Development Index has been constantly grew from 0.472 in 1990 to 0.706 in 2021. It means that while the level of economic development of Vietnam is still in in the bottom part of the medium income group, but Human Development Index of Vietnam already is in the high group of the world. Concerning the political development, you may know that the government formed after the August Revolution in 1945 in Vietnam was a multi-party government. For the sake of national unity, Ho Chi Minh and the communists at that time, when despite the fact that they got an absolute majority in the first ever free election in the country in 1946, but they have devoted 70 seats in the parliament for other parties, even the opposition party who did not take part in the election for the sake of national unity. But the first specificity of the political situation in Vietnam is the impact of foreign aggression. The foreign aggression, when it happened in Vietnam, has divided the nation, and number of the party who were backed by the foreign forces and have taken part in the side of aggressor against the nation. And when foreign aggressor had to leave the country, they also gone with the foreign aggressor. By doing so, they excluded themselves from the political life in Vietnam. Meanwhile, the Communist Party, led by Ho Chi Minh, has shown a very bright example of sacrificing for the national independence and liberty, an example of ethic and the ethic and caring of the people interest. That's why the communists has gained an absolute credibility among the society. Absolute majority of young people in Vietnam who are politically active have a willingness to join the Communist Party, not any other party. That's why the Communist Party has been growing and became a single party in power in Vietnam. That is a historical context which led to the leading role of the Communist Party of Vietnam. This is not because of suppression of other political parties. It is the result of political development in objective situation of political development in Vietnam. On the other hand, the building of socialism is not a one-day business. It is a long-term process of self-conscious and oriented development towards a socialist objective, and which require continuity, the permanent and consistent political leadership. In this case, by the Communist Party. The history of the world has shown that any interruption in the political leadership, it means that Communist Party have given their line or their role will destroy the whole achievement of the revolution and people's struggle before that. That's why it required the leading role of Communist Party, and the Constitution of Vietnam has stated the leading role of the Communist Party in Vietnam over the state and society. In Vietnam, you may see that the political life is a little bit different from the traditional political system in Soviet Union or in other socialist country in Europe. For example, with the election of the National Assembly of Vietnam, so the number of candidatures are always big, more than the seats or the number of the MPs to be elected. So there is a competition among, when the running for the election, not only communists but non-communists can also run for the election. But what happened actually that as a result of people's voting, majority always are communists there. Only there are few non-communists are elected in the National Assembly. In our National Assembly activities, there is sessions of question and answer where the Prime Minister and ministers have to answer the questions raised by the deputies in various aspects, and this question is sent from the voters, from the people across the country to their deputies to raise to the Prime Minister and Minister of the country. And all these sessions are being lively transmitted nationwide, so people can follow all of these things. So it means that the level of transparency of political decision making in Vietnam is relatively high. And in Vietnam, there are at current there are 53,000 people's organizations across the country, and including over 500 mass organizations operating nationwide. And the mass organization in Vietnam has a function to represent people's voice and people's interest. They are eligible to monitor the function and activities of the government, and presenting people's demands or people's opinion to the parliament and to the government and to the party. And in Vietnam, since the nature of the state is a state of people, by people and for the people, that's why the relationship between the mass organizations and the state and government is a relationship between the partner sharing the same objective and interest. And that's why this is a constructive partnership, not opposition and confrontation. So this is a specific of the situation of the relation of the mass organization in Vietnam. We have nearly 900 media agencies.
Sorry to interrupt, but we need to be moving on to the next topic. We can maybe one more minute on this.
Okay. So we can move ahead. I would like to say only that the media is very active in Vietnam, and also there is very clearly the religious freedom in Vietnam. All religions have free conditions to operate in Vietnam without any kind of limitation, and there is a practice of grassroots democracy in Vietnam, where the direct democracy is being exercised already for decades. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was very informative. We appreciate everything, all the work you put into your presentation. The next topic will be presented both by Mr. Lai and Ms. Merle on the current challenges and opportunities. Who would like to begin on that one?
May I request Comrade Merle to be the first?
Okay. If you can hear me, I'll start and we can have a dialogue between us. So I also want to thank Comrade Loy for the really incisive and clear presentation. I think I want to add a couple of things. The reading that I think some of you saw from the party secretary general had some interesting points that bears on what Comrade Loy said. So one thing he said is that Vietnam is not going through capitalism, but at the same time, it's a transition to socialism. And that Vietnam is seeing that in a very materialist way, looking at the material realities and the need to build up both the economy, the political system, the socialist rule of law, and the struggle of ideas. And I think that there's a lot of things that are very interesting about all of those. So one thing that I've noticed is that from the early times I went to Vietnam till now, is that young people who are very patriotic have come to kind of see the benefits of what socialism has brought and the system has brought, but they also sometimes attribute it to the market because it's easy to see the market and socialism is imbued in everything. So I think that that's one kind of ideological task that I'd like to hear Lloyd talk about. The other thing that the party secretary general talked about in his thing and has talked about a lot and focused a lot is what's called the blazing furnace of fighting corruption. And one of the hallmarks of the Secretary General's term at the head of the party has been fighting corruption at all levels, but particularly at high levels, even people in the political bureau, people who had party offices in cities, etc. So kind of I'd like Lloyd to talk about the significance of that, how's it going, and what are some of the things that we can draw from that. And the last thing I just wanted to add to what Lloyd said before we go on is that I just read that the minimum wage was raised 6% for workers, I guess blue collar, industrial, and some other workers, which is a very significant thing in this post-COVID period, when a lot of countries are not able to do that and things are going backward. That Vietnam is able to say that the people need it and we're going to just do it. So let me just start with those kind of comments and get Lloyd's take, and then we'll continue back and forth.
Speaking about the challenges, I think that despite all of those achievements, but we still have numerous limitations and also have to face emerging challenges. Concerning external factors, for Vietnam today, the issue of Vietnam sovereignty in South China Sea is one of the burning issues, since this sea is becoming more and more place of more and more maneuver by various forces, and there is a threat to impose unilateral control of this important sea by some country in the region, and that is a issue that Vietnam people very much concerned today. That is one of the extra challenge. The second extra challenge is the actions and plot and actions of the hostile forces to destabilize situation in Vietnam, to promote the opposition in the country, to promote the so-called color revolution for regime change in Vietnam, we call that the peaceful evolution, so-called, in for changing the system, political system in Vietnam. The third external factor is a changing changing environment surrounding Vietnam in the region and in the world, where we see that Southeast Asia becoming the place for US and China confrontation and contradiction, and the impact of the crisis going on in the world and the policy of the major power surrounding Vietnam. Apart from those external challenges, we are also facing our internal problem and issues. And one of the issue the party consider as a most dangerous dangerous situation is the corruption. And as the comrade Merle was saying, we consider that is one of the four most dangerous, biggest dangers for Vietnam, and because that is against the nature of the Communist Party and the nature of socialist society, and that is losing the credibility of the party among the people, and the corruptions. Apart from corruption, there is a phenomena of degradation of ideological, political, and ethical, level among the cadres, because of the impact of the market values and dynamics, another challenge is that Vietnam's economy is very open and very widely integrated to the world, and we need to face a challenge how when opening up, but to defend and maintain the economic sovereignty and self-reliance in the context of complicated development of the world market and competition, and in the sustainability of development is one essential thing. Last but not least, according to me, is the issue of related to environment. The degradation of the environment or the threat of water security because of the situation happening with Mekong Delta, and especially the climate change. Vietnam is among the 6 countries who are mostly affected by climate change, particularly the rise of the sea will affect more than 20 million people living in Mekong Delta of Vietnam, and those are, in my view, are the key challenge that we are facing. And of course, in this context, the party has launched a policy of, on the one hand, and to reconstruct economy in order to increase more the more effectiveness of the economy, productivity, and self-sustainability of the economy, and diversifying economic relationship in order not to be depending on any single market is also a solution. And the party is is also trying to balance the economic development with social development, with cultural development, and protection of the environment in practice, strengthening. At the same time, there has been a campaign inside the party fighting corruption and degradation among the cadres of the party. And this campaign has been launched in a recent year and has brought the positive result, which help party to consolidate the confidence among the people towards the party. These are the current challenges and measures that Vietnam is implying at this stage. I would like to share with you. Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to add some points and ask you to respond, Loy. So one thing that came up in the article of the Secretary General is, or at least that raised for some of us, is one of the theories had been that the state part of the economy would be an anchor for the development of socialism, even though, you know, there is the multi-sector economy and a lot of things are not guaranteed to the state. But how do you resolve, how is Vietnam looking at the contradiction between the problems that have happened in the state economy in terms of being productive or whatever, and maybe some corruption, and the growth of the private and joint economy? How do you balance that with trying to maintain the essential and key role of the state sector, while at the same time needing to privatize? Like, how is that going? I know that's the theory, but how is that going? And then the second question I want to know is around the struggle for ideas in the country. How is the educational work going with young people who've benefited so much from what socialism has brought, but didn't go through the struggle during the war against the French, against the US imperialists, and now kind of maybe take for granted or you know, don't see the importance of the need of pushing through to build more and more of a socialist country? How do you take up that kind of education struggle with young people?
For concerning the state economic sector, it is our unchanged policy that we need to maintain and consolidate the key role of the state sector in the socialist-oriented economy. But you are right. There is the challenge for the sector itself. One of the challenge is the corruption. But we think that corruption is not a nature of state sector itself. It's a problem of the management and mechanism of monitoring and the issue of the allocation of cadres. So that's why in order to face successfully those challenges, we are not abolishing state sector, but rather focus on the management and monitoring the state sector. In fact, in Vietnam, a part of some of the cases of corruption in the state economic sector, there are still very bright examples of the effectiveness and contribution of the state-owned enterprises, not only economically but also socially. Like Viettel, for example, like Vinamilk, for example, they are becoming a world brand now today. And some example of the best example of the socially oriented economy enterprises. And that's why what we change is that, first of all, we have separated the state-owned enterprises from the government agencies, so various ministries. And we created special commission on monitoring the state enterprises under the government, in order to have more closely to monitor and regulate the activities of the state sector, and at the same time to nominate better cadres for the state sector. And on the other hand, we also applying the accounting mechanism of the state sector towards more transparency, because state sector is a public ownership. So then its activities should be known as wide as possible, should be controlled by the public. And that will help to reduce the corruption and any wrongdoing else. But this is also a process going on. We haven't yet accomplished this process, but so far these measures have been helping to address those problems in the state sector. Concerning the ideological education for youth, I think that Comrade Merle is very right. Young people in Vietnam today is living and growing in qualitatively different conditions compared to the previous generation. I think that it is good that they don't have to experience what previous generation had to. But at the same time, it is naturally that they will assume that everything what they are enjoying today is granted, and they can have a kind of different view on the values are to be promoted. And the only measures that we think that we have to intensify different educational measures for the young people. Apart from education in school and universities, there are always political, somehow direct or indirect educations there. We have been launching several form of attraction of young people into the political education. Like Ho Chi Minh Communist Youth Union has been organizing kind of the army semester. So for young people to join and to exercise or practice like they are in the army in the summertime. And this is surprisingly the number of young people who apply to this program had been much more than the capacity of their accommodation by the organizers. Or we organize different kind of the competition on knowledge, on the history, on the political, social issues for the young people, and also in order to cope with the new development in IT and in information area. There are a group of discussion and exchange via internet on those issues has been developed. So I think that there is no single solution, but we have to promote diverse, type of activities that will fit various interests of young people, but to raise awareness much more. You can see that those young people today, they tend to be more oriented to the materialistic values, but in Vietnam, the number of young people who hold the red flags is very big. In a stadium when supporting the football team, they not only wear red flag, but the photo of Ho Chi Minh. They're singing patriotic songs in stadium. You see, so these are some of the measures that we would like to do. I don't think that we have enough already these measures for addressing the situation, but we are on the process in improving that, and that is a long-term process. Thank you.
Yeah, before we get into questions and answers, I just want to emphasize a couple of things. One, around young people, not only are they wearing the red flag in millions when the Vietnamese soccer team wins in the street, there's a kind of resurgence of kind of homegrown interest in Marxism. So Marxism is taught in the universities, sometimes well and sometimes not so well. But there have been like study groups and videos I found online of people having their own grassroots discussion among young people. What does this mean? What does it mean in the world? What does it mean for Vietnam? How do we think it should be developed and stuff like that? And then the other thing I wanted to emphasize from what Loy said is the role of the mass organizations. These are really big, powerful organizations. So the Women's Union is, I think, 18 to 20 million women. And it has chapters in every little, from the big city to the mountaintop commune with 20 families. And it has programs, not only for its members, but for other women and even for men. Very pioneering programs on domestic violence, the role of the girl child. Sorry about that. And a new program on domestic workers, because more rich families are hiring people to work in the home. So there's a program about domestic workers and how the women should represent themselves and defend themselves and make sure their rights are implemented. And on the trade union, somebody asked about that. I'll just say a word or two. The trade unions have been going through changes, from the change from the state-run economy to the joint state, private and private economy. And now the trade unions are using a lot of new methods, allowing more local kind of development of branches. And now Vietnam has signed on to 2 key International Labor Organization covenants, which will allow some more development of factory-based units, trade union units that are not officially all set up by the General Trade Union Federation. But this is something that's really evolving. And one thing I want to say is a trade unionist here, Vietnam has probably the world's record for the number of strikes that actually win all or part of their demands. Most of them are wildcat, they don't go through the whole procedure, but in general, they win because of the support of the public, and the local government and party will come in and support them. So this is something that's been very much neglected. And as our trade union movement is struggling and making some real advances, but still, having a lot of difficulty growing in the way it needs to be, the Vietnamese trade union movement, whether it's by the official union or by the wildcat strikes, is doing rather well.
Thank you, comrades Lei and Merle. Your expertise and eloquence is very much appreciated. We received a number of questions and questions. There were a lot of questions on international relations. We will save those for a follow-up webinar, which will focus more on international issues and diplomacy. And today we'll talk about we'll share the questions on socialism today in Vietnam. I apologize if I mispronounce anyone's name. Fahad asked about the Vietnamese public's response to the socialist-oriented market economy and what political education exists around this topic.
I think, yeah, I mean, the Ho Chi Minh Communist Youth Union, the mass organizations, everybody, they do talk about why the market economy is needed. And it's similar to what Loy already laid out, that any country needs to have the resources to build into a modern socialist economy. If you try to build socialism without those building up the forces of production, as it's called, you have the problem that Lloyd described after 75, where there was a will to do it, but the economic base and the material conditions didn't allow it. So what happened then is people started to starve. People that we know were like, we can't feed our family. Yes, we have a daycare center in our commune, but we don't make enough money from our farming or our factory work to feed our kids. And people had told me even then, you can't build socialism if your people are starving. That's just sort of a basic thing. So that when I think people in Vietnam, it is being explained why the market is necessary and that it's not the forever thing for Vietnam, that Vietnam is building step by step and going through the transition. And that the market facilitates that. And also the market is heavily taxed. So it's not like they're taking all of the proceeds of what they make. It's heavily taxed to pay for the social system in Vietnam, to pay for Agent Orange victims, to pay for the development of healthcare and education, etc. And so I think that's really important to look at. But I think it's easy to say it, to say that this is necessary. And I mean, the other thing I should say is that the world, if you look at the state of the world, it's also kind of understanding that Vietnam can't survive in a vacuum. So if you don't trade, if you don't do commerce, which involves a market, because that's the way the world works, you're going to be very poor and isolated. So I think these things are explained to people, especially to young people. The question is, how do they really absorb that? And then how do they keep the imagination of what socialism will look like in the future in a world that's overwhelmingly capitalist, even though Vietnam and Cuba and some other countries have made tremendous strides forward. So kind of keeping that as a creative thinking among people is a job that the party talks about. So let me turn it over to Loy to correct me there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Merle. There is the fact that absolute majority of population in Vietnam enjoy and appreciate the social economic development of the country. Even not only people in the cities, in the industrial centers, but people in rural areas. You go to the villages of Vietnam today, you can see a lot of positive changes really in people's life. And that's why people of Vietnam, when they appreciate the đổi mới, the renewal policy of the party and the government. And the survey among the people has always shown that people say that their life today is much better than before. And they do believe that tomorrow will be better than today. It means the optimism, but based on the experience. That is a one reality. But do people realize that it is thanks to the socialism-oriented market economy or not? It is another question, because for many people, what for them new is as a World Bank always emphasize, that a new thing in Vietnam is first of all market economy, secondly private business sector, and thirdly is to open up to foreign direct investment. It means that these are new, but that is not a solution, overall solution, because all of these elements integrated into Vietnam economy on the basis of the socialist oriented, foundation, platform, and direction of the development, because market and private sector and foreign investments are everywhere in the world, and we can see what is happening around the world today. In Vietnam, this is a combination, and the foundation and also direction of the socialist is there. But we've been trying to explain to people this thing through in education, in the media, and the activities of the mass organization. But I think that it required greater efforts in order to really to keep this political understanding of the masses, more clearly and more firmly. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Miriam, who wanted to know about the domestic migrant workers in Vietnam from the rural areas to the cities. What is the current system doing to help improve their situation?
Yes. The migrant workers, domestic migrant workers, is a new issue in Vietnam. It's raised along with the process of industrialization in the country, which is going very fast. And now migrant workers already consist a significant part of the labor forces in many cities and provinces. For migrant workers, there are several key concerns. One is, first of all, the salary, the income, and social benefits that they can gain from working, far from home. And for this, we have been working with the Chamber of Industry and Commerce of Vietnam and trade union and the government agency in order to monitor the minimum wage, the social insurance and health insurance, which oblige the employers to pay for the worker. Another group of issue And I think that is also burning issue is the housing for migrant workers. This situation is still, a serious situation because majority of migrant workers have to rent their place of staying in a very primitive, conditions, and in various cities. On this issue, the government and trade union are launching program of housing for workers, in social housing for workers, and by building the house for workers with in various industrial zones and in the cities. This program is still going on, but still far away from meeting the needs of migrant workers. Another issue is cultural life for migrant workers. Because they work and they come home and they don't have a kind of the conditions for enjoying the cultural development. And for this, the trade union currently is launching a program for taking care of the improvement of the cultural life for the workers in those industrial areas. I think those are main measures are being implemented, but still a lot have to be done, and we have still far way to go. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lloyd. I want to add a couple things. So the questioner also asked about why do they have to leave home to earn money to pay for education and healthcare, particularly the women. First of all, I want to say it's not just women who are going to the city. It's plenty of men as well. For the women and the question of education and healthcare, you're actually raising two questions. One is, while the education and healthcare system are everywhere and they serve everyone, they're still underfunded, even though the government tries. Vietnam is a country of almost 100 million, 90 something, 900, whatever it is, almost, yeah, almost 100 million people. It's a big country. It's a fairly dispersed country. And so to have the money to pay to upgrade the health and education system is difficult, although Vietnam is trying. And one thing that Vietnam had to do in order not to lose the doctors and teachers to the private sector was to allow them to moonlight, to take private patients as well as state patients. And all of this has led to some problems in quality in healthcare and education, although again, the government is working and trying very hard to do that. So that might be one thing, although I think I've heard when people come from the countryside to the city, there's a couple of other things. One, it's not just healthcare and education for their families, it's just to have money. Because when you work at farming, it's a very hard occupation. It's very affected, like Comrade Loy said, by the environmental issues in Vietnam and in the world. So people may do a good job farming, and then the climate crisis and global warming and floods and all of that can ruin their crop. So it's very hard to do. And then farmers are not state employees, often under the new system. They work for themselves. You know, they don't have the benefits that people working for, you know, an employer in a factory or in an office might have. And then the other thing is Vietnam is one of the most population dense countries in the world, meaning there's a lot of people and not a lot of land. If you look, it's a long, skinny country, and the coastline is eroded by global warming. So farming is harder and harder, right? And there's less and less land, because when you have kids and grandkids, what do? You divide up the land more so that the family can farm it. So all of these things have made farming which is still indispensable, and the government is trying to support by building things in the countryside that could also provide extra income, like handicrafts, small entrepreneurship, small manufacturing that would allow people to farm and make extra money. But it's not that simple. The other thing is, farmers have told me, it's hard work, So sometimes people say, like, I'll try my hand in the city and see what I can do. And whether that's better or not is debatable. But there's a whole lot of factors that are sort of boiled into this at the same time.
Thank you. And you had touched on, Merle, the subject of impact of climate change, which segues to the next question, is from, it was an anonymous question. What is the Communist Party of Vietnam's approach to climate change?
Boy?
Oh, yeah. Communist Party of Vietnam consider climate change is one of the biggest challenges for humanity at large, and particularly for Vietnam in the forthcoming period, because Vietnam, as I told, is among the 6 countries who are and will be most affected by the climate change. And for dealing with climate change, the policy of the party is that we have to do mental required a kind of the integrated policy and measures to cope with the climate change. On the one hand, Vietnam has to go for the lowering carbon emission, contribute to the global efforts for this. And Vietnam, in the recent COP conference, the Prime Minister of Vietnam has made very strong commitment about that Vietnam in 2030 will be will reduce significantly the carbon emission of Vietnam. Secondly, we launched a campaign of planting 1 billion of young trees nationwide in 5 years, and that is going on. The process going on. Thirdly, we try to adopt ourselves with the situation of changing climate. For example, peasants now in Mekong Delta are not only growing rice there because of lack of water, and rice production will not have enough water for it. That's why we change the type of production in Mekong Delta by combination of the of growing rice with other kind of plantation, and by growing mushrooms, shrimps and fish, and that helped the peasants in Mekong Delta to get more income, and to compare with traditional way of growing rice only, and at the same time that is in conformity with the changes in the water supply conditions in Mekong Delta. So those are but at the same time we think that still a lot of things have to be done in this process. We are cooperating with UN and different international agencies or countries. Like, for example, we are cooperating with Netherlands in order to have a project of preventing a sea rise in Vietnam, because Netherlands has a good practice about that, and we are working with them in order to address the seas rising in the southern part of Vietnam. So those are measures are being taken today.
Thank you very much to Comrades Light and Merle. Thank you for sharing all your experience so eloquently with everyone here today. And thank you everyone for all the questions and participation. Apologize that we could not get to every question today, but we hope that this webinar will be the start of a series of webinars on Vietnam. The next one we hope to have on more related to international relations and diplomacy. So for all the people that asked about those topics, please follow us, and we will let you know when that webinar is available or scheduled. And then we'll have another webinar on solidarity with Vietnam and how those of us around the world who are comrades and allies of Vietnam can help. Thank you everyone so much, and we look forward to future participation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to everybody and to the Communist Party for organizing this.